Lisbeth, silent suffering, inner guilt, and the beginning of the awakening of consciousness. The testimony of the Spirit. Lisbeth, presented in the second part of Heaven and Hell, reveals a type of discreet yet profound spiritual suffering, marked by silent inner guilt, emotional fragility, and the difficulty of facing one's own conscience. Her account shows that spiritual pain does not always express itself through explicit rebellion or despair, but can manifest as persistent sadness and a sense of unworthiness. Lisbeth manifests with enough clarity to recognize her condition, but she is deeply dejected. Her conscience is burdened by a continuous feeling of sorrow and moral inferiority. She realizes that her choices in life, although not marked by significant visible faults, were driven by weakness of character, emotional dependence, and a lack of inner strength. This recognition weighs heavily on her conscience. Modern depth psychology helps to understand this state. People who live dominated by the fear of making mistakes, by excessive submission, or by the difficulty of taking emotional responsibility tend to develop chronic feelings of guilt and worthlessness. When the compensatory mechanisms of material life cease, these feelings emerge strongly, generating prolonged inner suffering. Spiritism clarifies that Lisbeth's suffering is not punishment, but a result of the consciousness awakening to its own inner omission. It is not just about what has been done, but what has not been developed: moral courage, emotional autonomy, and responsibility for one's own choices. The consciousness, upon realizing these gaps, suffers. Modern science reinforces this reading by demonstrating that psychological maturation requires a conscious confrontation with one's own limits. Avoiding conflicts, delegating important decisions, or living in the shadow of others' will may create an apparent tranquility in life, but it comes at a high price when consciousness expands. Another striking point in Lisbeth's testimony is the passivity in the face of suffering. She suffers, but has not yet found the inner strength to transform that suffering into a drive for change. This state is common in the early stages of awakening consciousness, when the individual recognizes the problem but has not yet developed the confidence to act. Spiritism teaches that this state is not definitive. As Lisbeth understands that spiritual justice does not require perfection, but sincere effort for growth, her suffering will begin to transform. The feeling of guilt gives way to conscious responsibility when awareness realizes that there is always the possibility to learn and move forward. This testimony also invites us to reflect on a frequently overlooked aspect. Inner omission also generates spiritual consequences. Not taking charge of one's own life, not developing moral firmness, and not cultivating emotional autonomy are choices that profoundly shape the state of consciousness. Lisbeth represents many sensitive and fragile consciousnesses who do not see themselves as bad, but who also have not positioned themselves in relation to their own existence. Her account reminds us that spiritual evolution requires inner courage, even if it is silent and gradual. Reflecting on this testimony is an invitation to self-compassion coupled with responsibility. Acknowledging weaknesses without condemning oneself, developing emotional autonomy, and consciously taking ownership of one's choices are fundamental steps toward inner liberation. If this account helped you reflect on silent guilt, emotional fragility, and the awakening of consciousness, like, share, and leave your comment. Your participation helps this message reach more people.